Lightweight, step at the side when we coming. Feel it in your chest, the syllables get pumping. People on the street get panic and start running. Words on loose leaf sheet, complete coming. I jump on my mind, I summon the rhyme, I'm dumping. Healing the blind, I promise to let the sun in. Sick of the dark ways, we march to the drumming. Jump when they tell us that they want to see jumping. Dad, I want to see some fist pumping. Risk something, take back what's yours. Say something that you know they might attack you for. Cause I'm sick of being treated like I have before. Like a stupid standing for what I'm standing for. Like this war's really just a different brand of war. Like it doesn't cater to...
All right, everybody, welcome to Wide Awake Radio. I'm your host, Charlie McGrath. It is the 15th of February, Tuesday. Eric Lovely is going to be joining us in just a second. If I can manage to give Brett the right phone number to call him. Let me make sure I did. Okay, good deal. Eric's on, and I'll bring him up in just a second. You know, I'm perusing the news, and I dropped an article in about the Patriot Act, and I want to get into that, and I want to try to tie this all together because there's several stories that I want to talk about with Eric. You know, primarily the number one concern I have right now for the world, besides this tragedy that we live in, that we call a democracy, that we call so-called freedom in the police state, the number one tragedy I see coming down the road like a freight train is food. And this came to me today when I was at a locally owned, a mom and pop grocery store. Believe it or not, there's still one of these left in Bozeman, Montana. And I went into this today, and right there, they on the produce stand, it says, be warned, higher prices are on their way, and then it quotes many reasons. A lot of them you can see at wideawakenews.com. I have a couple stories up there showing that the massive storms we've had in the south and in northern Mexico have wiped out crops. You all remember the horrible summer that the Europeans had, especially in Russia, one of the largest wheat producers in the world. Their food prices are going to soar. China is trying to figure out how to make plastic rice to feed to its citizens, and their imports. The one thing we do export to this country is food. Their imports are expected to be ninefold what they were on corn, what they were projected to be, ninefold. That's on a year that our own government says by the end of 2011 we're going to be at a 15-year low on our corn reserves. So food prices are what are sparking riots around the world. Food prices are food. Period. Starvation is what's causing the pushback in Egypt and Tunisia. I know that CNN wants to come on and Fox News wants to come on and paint this romantic picture of people taking to the streets so they can secure liberty. That isn't the case. It's just like the French Revolution. The people were starving to death. The high and mighty elite, the too big to fail of that time, were beautiful. They set themselves up beautifully by going out saying things like, let them eat cake. People are starving to death. That's when people come to the streets. That's when people freak out. And what people should be freaking out about today in this country, although it's not going to happen because we're more concerned in this country about some reporter that has a stroke on air and how funny and silly she looks. So her 10-second video, is going to get 1 trillion views on YouTube and probably a quadrillion views on the internet on total, because that's titillating, that's provocative, that's pulp culture, that's fun. We can laugh at somebody and forget about our own little feeble existence. But in reality, we have the president today hanging a medal around Warren Buffett's neck, talking about this wonderful guy giving away all of his fortune, the vast majority of his fortune, to help humanity. And all I see is failure rewarding corruption, plain and simple. That's it. I see a president who gets the Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing, for breathing, for fogging up a mirror. He's going to close Gitmo, he's going to bring home the boys and the girls, and we're going to have peace reign in this country, and the liberal agenda is going to be fulfilled, and everything's going to be fine in this country. If you think there's a difference between the Republicans and the Democrats, conservatives or liberal, you're out of your mind. You're playing a game. You're playing a game that's destined to it's already lost. If you're on the far left and you're looking at the President Obama thinking, This is the guy. This is the Kennedy moment where he's going to change everything. He's going to get the financial situation under control. He's going to make these banksters pay. He's going to bring peace and love throughout the world. Well, look at the world, guys. Look at the world halfway through his first term. We still have Gitmo. We're still in the longest engagement in the history of the United States of America. Thousands of people are dying every day, and I know not American troops are, but we're killing people around the world in the name of fighting terror, love, and terrorism, a war that we can never win because we can't quantify it. We can't invade a country, plant our flag, and be done with this war. And what do we get for it? We get this president awarded the Nobel Peace Prize, hanging the Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor this country can bestow upon somebody, to a too-big-to-fail Warren Buffett. And before those of you who are fans of him, if you want to call in and debate his achievements, you know what? Here's the deal. In the bailouts in 2008, Warren Buffett he gave $5 billion to Goldman Sachs. He received 7 to 14 times the warrants that the American people paid or received for their $10 billion bailout of Goldman Sachs. He also received preferred share that he got a premium on when he wanted to sell it, and it was up to him if he sold it or not. The American people, well, we bent over and took it, because that's what we do every single day in this country when we're run by this corporatocracy oligarchy. And I'm just absolutely sick of it. And I see the people celebrating alternative media all excited last week because we had the Patriot Act defeated, and I came on the show the night after that and said, guys, I've looked into this a little bit. This was a parliamentary trick. It was a hotbed piece of legislation, required a supermajority, but in the fine print it says, well, it'll be coming back to the congressional floor in a week or so. And sure enough, last night it passed. The Patriot Act is alive and well. This piece of legislation that was supposed to sunset out after we fought all the terrorists and we won and we spread democracy around the world, it didn't sunset anywhere. The only thing that's sunsetting is your liberty. 275 representatives voted for it. 144 voted against it. So things like the lone wolf provision, if you're a foreign national in this country and you're not affiliated with anybody other than yourself, you can still be followed by the government because you could be a terrorist. Roving wiretaps. If the government deems it necessary, they don't have to really report to anybody. They can just go ahead and start recording, start listening to what you're doing. And you know what? You know what response I get in comments and coworkers even, for that matter? Well, if I'm not doing anything wrong, I don't have anything to worry about. Well, that's just absolutely astounding logic. That's why we have thousands of Americans dead in the war on terror, millions of nationals around the world dead because of the war on terror. So I can have some clown say to me, some sheep will say to me, if I'm not doing anything wrong, I don't have to worry about it. You absolutely have to worry about it. There's nothing more important than this. This is why we're here. This is what this country is supposed to be about. It is lost. It's completely lost. This thing is going to last forever. Forever, until the implosion of this country and the dumbing down of the world population to we're all one level, we're all working in a feudal system, and we have these overlords above us telling us what's best for us. People, philanthropists like Warren Buffett, who knows better because he made all the money. Why? Because it was guaranteed. And now it's law. Once you're too big to fail, that's where you are forever. You're too big to fail, and the rest of us are too small to succeed. I'm absolutely sick of it. Every day it's like Chinese water torture, drip, drip. It's never going to end, it seems like. All right, that's that. That's the rant. Man, I tell you what, some nights are harder than others, that's for sure. My good friend Eric Lovely, not only is he a radio show host doing a 2-hour show every single day, he's also a filmmaker, and he's also a sovereign citizen, and he's also my friend, so welcome to the program, Eric Lovely.
Oh, how are you doing tonight, man? You are on fire.
And which is funny, Eric. It's probably. I was thinking about that as I'm going off there. I'm thinking, you know what? Eric must think I'm insane because I had a conversation with him about 20 minutes before the show started, half hour, and I'm joking about whatever, fixing dinner for the kids. But Eric, that's how incensed I get with just a few headlines. Eric, it's unbelievable to me. 2.5 years after the bailout nation began, that everything is just back to normal for most of the people in this country.
Well,
as far as their perception, I should say.
Well, they're completely lost, you see, and I've been doing a lot of research, and I finally found the information that I was looking for. And here's what no one seems to be talking about. It definitely ties directly into the sovereign aspect because it deals with the corporate entity known as the government and you. It's not Department of Homeland Security. It's Department of Homeland Securities. That's their official name. Now, it's not security, it's securities. The DHS was formulated and given the power it has because it is the receivership corporation in the economic bankruptcy plan for America. It's already in the paperwork. There's no way to dispute it. And through this, I have found, most people don't realize, because we owe so much money, that now the Chinese have been opening up at least one in every single state. They have been claiming property against the debt and opening up small communist Chinese towns in every single state of the Union. Now, if people don't realize where we're at, people don't realize what's going on. We're in a serious amount of trouble. We have sold all of our grain reserves to either the oil company or to China. The monsoons, the cyclones in Australia and everything else, I mean, we're talking a one-third cut of basically the world food supply. And there's already how many people starving and whatnot, but, I mean, people need to understand that the Department of Homeland Security isn't about securities. It's about securities, which are bonds. And they're taking over. That's the reason why that they were given commerce power, is because that's the reason why the president signed the executive order realigning all things under the White House, which is actually under the Department of Homeland Securities. This is the corporation that is going to take over. It is the new government. It is the receivership. If you know anything about bankruptcies and corporations, when large corporations go bankrupt, they go into receivership. And the United States Gov is bankrupt, and it is going into receivership this year. And the Department of Homeland Securities is the one that's going to manage the collapse. And it is going to be totalitarian. There is no question about it, because you owe these international bankers, you are going to pay. You're going to give up your property. You're going to look at Bill 787 that's rolling around in the Senate. They look to claim all of the waterways in America, every drop of water that there is, even a wet meadow, and they're going to collateralize it and turn it over to the Department of Homeland Security so they can recollateralize a new government. That's basically what you have going on here. The government that's seating in power now is taking everything that it can so that it can collateralize it in this debt restructure, and which is going to then bring in a world currency and so on and so forth. And if you have any problems with that, well, you know, they have plenty of black-booted thugs to make sure that you pay what you owe. But you really don't owe it. I mean, it's fictional. It doesn't exist, you know. The money is non-existent. They talked about, a think tank group was talking about the dinar being the world's next currency, and it's going to be the currency of the future. But what people aren't really understanding when they read that, they're like, why would we want to use a Muslim paper money? There are two versions of the dinar. The dinar they're talking about is the one that's minted 100% in gold. They're already telling us that they've admitted, without telling us, that gold is the only real money. But since the elites are the only ones that have the gold, and you're going to live in a serfdom-style life where you receive credits every day to buy your food and whatnot, the elites are going to use their gold and silver, and you won't have any currency at all.
That's an absolutely outstanding overview. I need to talk to you more, Eric, because, you know, usually when I would be back in the day, once a week, I would get a lot of this kind of information from you, and that's funny. I was thinking the same thing. I've been watching. One of the listeners sent me a link to a couple of videos. This is just going off on the sidetrack on money for a second, but one of them was the Secret of Oz, and then Money Masters. Have you seen either of those documentaries?
Yeah, I've actually seen them both.
Yeah. And I mean, it explains beautifully how this has happened time and time again. But now, we're at the level that, with technology that we can do this globally over the whole entire world, where we're going to have, one system of government, one system of oligarch rule, and we're going to be living with whatever they say we can live with. You know, they have all the gold. Silver isn't going to come back as a standard. We're not going to go back in the silver standard because there's too much of it. We're not going to go back on a government issuing money and determining the value thereof because the bankers can't control it. So we are going to have a standard.
Actually, let me make a correction for you. There isn't too much silver. There's not enough. Technically, if you look over the year to, or actually the decade to decade, in 1950, the above ground gold availability of gold was at, I think it was 6 billion tons, something of that nature. It's now up to 8.8. Well, at the same time, the above ground silver was at 12 billion tons, and today it's at 1.9. The silver's gone. It doesn't exist. Silver is far more precious than gold at the moment. Because we consume it so readily, and it just disappears. I mean, it's gone. There's no getting it back. There's no recycling the flakes of silver out of your computer components and reconstituting a silver coin. It would cost 10 times what the coin is worth to just do that. So, you know, in reality, silver is a major player. The dinar is minted in pure silver and pure gold, and it is 100% gold and silver-backed currency. And that's the reason why they're touting it for the future. Most people don't realize the stranglehold that's on silver. I mean, there's so much paper. You see, the problem with silver is there's so much phony paper silver that most of the accountants and people can't make heads or tails out of what doesn't exist, what does exist, and so forth. But if you take the on-hand bullion mint numbers, silver doesn't exist. I mean, they got billions and billions of pieces of paper out there saying that this silver exists. And it just doesn't. And the amount that's procured and mined, our consumption, okay, we mine X amount of silver. Doesn't matter how many tons it is a year. But X amount of silver that we mine is used up plus 15%. So every year we're actually taking 15% more out of the silver market every single year because we consume all that is mined and we want more. So the silver issue is a really, really hot button for me. People should be really watching the silver and investing in it because once all those phony paper silver disappears and they realize exactly how much silver is really left, the value, I think for a short period of time, you're going to see gold and silver change places. But that's just my opinion.
No, and you know, you and I have talked silver and gold for a long time, and I agree with you. The industrial use for silver has far outstripped the supply. I was referencing, as in The Secret of Oz, you know, the Yellow Brick Road. One of the depressions that we had in this country in the late 1800s was caused because the banksters in chief wanted the silver standard removed and have strictly a gold standard, and it was because of the expansion into the West and the strikes of silver that were found in the West, and they ended up getting their way to where silver was no longer, there was no longer silver certificates, and we still went forward with a gold standard because it's far easier to control that commodity because there's far less gold. I mean, in the ground, 16-to-1, the ratio that's in the ground, and they wanted to have a stranglehold on the money supply, and the easiest way to do that was to eliminate silver from backing the money supply and keeping it strictly gold because they had all the gold. So, but saying that silver is undervalued, I think, is an understatement, especially considering the scandals that we've seen in the last year or so, and far longer than that with manipulation and naked short selling, massive short positions of silver by J.P. Morgan Chase.
If you watch that movie and you understand what they did to silver, the reason why they did it is because the demand for silver was going to be so much higher than gold, which would then be counterproductive to their plans because they want you to be poor. They want you to be so poor you can't resist what they want to do. So therefore, they had to get you off the silver standard because the demand, if the demand was up so high and the need was so high, then your individual silver-backed note, your dollar bill that was a silver note, would start increasing in value exponentially, which would mean you wouldn't be poor. And so they had to remove that standard at that time because that was the first hurdle that they wanted to do, and they knew through industrialization what was going to happen to the value of your money. That if they would have left the silver standard in place today, silver, I mean, the American individual's lifestyle would be, I mean, we would all virtually be millionaires. I mean, just the idea of what silver would be worth if it was truly balanced against the industrial demand and at the same time was a monetary backing instrument. So, I mean, they had to do away with it.
Well, and done away with it they did, and now we are in a situation where we're going to see, whatever, gold, silver, both, one, the other, be swept back in as the true currency again. I mean, this is your feeling of what we're looking at in the not too distant future, where we're going to have precious metals backed money. And I personally think it will be a basket. I think it'll be the things we need to live. It'll be energy, so we'll have oil backing this currency, and we'll have gold and silver, but it'll be absolutely controlled from on high. And by the time this occurs, everybody who's categorized as the masses, the sheeple, they're not going to have any of these assets. They're not going to, how many people in this country anyway are going out and purchasing silver and purchasing gold? I mean, the numbers are increasing. They probably tripled in the last 2 years, but that number is still infinitesimal. And and even with those numbers, the supply can't keep up with it. So, what is your thought? Well, we're going to come up on a break here in a minute, so I want to get into that afterward. I would like to touch on not only currency, the IMF coming out saying hitting it hard lately, Eric. I'm sure you're aware of this. That we need to dump the dollar. It probably goes right hand in hand with your dinar example you gave us. But the IMF coming out saying it now. We've had European leaders come out and say it for the last 2 years. We have, Ben Bernanke saying there's no inflation in this country. And, meanwhile, we're looking at a doubling of corn prices in the last 6 months. We're looking at shortages everywhere. And this country, Eric, truly, this country is living in a fantasy world. And that's one of the reasons that, it's so hard not to get fired up every single night, because you see the lies and you want to correct the situation and try to wake folks up. We're going to be right back with Eric Lovely and more Wide Awake Radio right after this one and only break. All right, welcome back. Welcome back to Wide Awake Radio. I'm Charlie McGrath, your host. My website's wideawakenews.com. If you're listening and not in the chat, we have about 60 people in there now. I apologize to Eric right now and to everybody who was listening, who was waiting for a promotional video letting you know who was going to be the guest tonight. I shot that video and I uploaded it before an hour before the program, and YouTube is doing maintenance, so nothing is posting right now. So I apologize to anybody who was waiting to be informed. And Eric, I apologize to you, because usually we have a little bigger turnout in the chat when I can get the promotional video up in time. But nevertheless, I also wanted to thank Floyd. You know who you are. Right by sitting down for the show, I got a notification of a donation to the website. So thank you, Floyd. I hope you're listening, and I hope you get that thank you. I want to make sure I thank everybody who takes the time and digs to help out this program and help out the website. So, Eric, I want to get into food a little bit. I had some questions in the chat during the break that I saw rolling when you were talking earlier about like the Chinese community. They wanted you to hit more on that topic. Are these Chinese communities going that are popping up around the country? Now, I've received some information sent to me, and I had it posted actually on the site for a bit, but then I tried to follow up and get some more sources on it, and you might be the guy I should have called on it, because I just couldn't find a lot of information on it. So can you go into that a little bit and explain what's going on?
Well, there is a Foreign Partnership Act that the President basically has made executive order. It has went through Department of Homeland Securities, and because of our collateralization issues, what we have done is we have the Department of Homeland Security has physically taken territory, land, in each state and given it to the Chinese. On the Department of Homeland Security's paperwork, it is viewed as a part of a foreign nation. In other words, they've physically given the soil and everything else to the Chinese. And they have generated now on these territories, because we owe them so much and we can't pay them back. That's what the whole meeting was about with the President when he came here. And I didn't know it till afterwards, but it was all about establishing these full-fledged communist communities if you walk onto the community, it is a foreign land, and it is ruled by Chinese authority. Technically, you would actually need a passport to walk on there inside your own state. And this is a reality. This is something that's really going on. Everything revolves around this receivership of the U.S. corporation. And no one's talking about it. Everybody's staring at Congress, and everybody's watching the lights and the dancing ponies, and they're getting in there and they're arguing and they're fighting. But what they don't realize is everything that they're arguing and fighting about is completely a moot point. The president took through executive order. If you go back and research them and look at the executive orders, it was probably about a month ago. No, probably about 2 months ago. He signed the executive order 1137 something. I can't remember all of it. But and basically he took all of the regulatory powers of Congress over all bureaucratic administrations, took it away from them, and shifted it under the Department of Homeland Security's with an executive order. Congress is pretty much neutered. They have no regulatory powers, and they gave them up freely. They did it quietly, while no one was looking. Everybody's worried about the jobs and the economy and this and that and another. They've already ceded. They already know that they've lost, and now they're giving away actual real-life property to the Chinese to come here and live and create communist communities inside your states.
Unbelievable. And I want to make an announcement. I had a message last night that somebody thought I wasn't taking calls last night, and that isn't the case. I usually wait till the second half of the show, especially when someone like Eric's on, that I want to let them speak. But if you have questions, you can call in, and for Eric, 877-342-6673. And I did write Freedom for You and Me. I wrote your question down. I hope I'm going to ask this right. If I don't, call in and ask it again, because Eric, a question was asked of you. What percentage do you think gold will be backing the dollar? And I'm assuming he means, in the new currency, in the new system. And if I'm asking that wrong, call in 877-342-6673, and you can clarify that question. And from Eric, from my perspective, it's going to go away. I mean, we're going to end up with something, whatever you want to call it. I mean, it looked like it was going to be the SDR for quite some time. So go ahead.
Well,
do you think we're going to still?
Okay, well, here's what's happened. If you go and you look up the Bookings Institute, just like Booking Institute. Now, the Booking Institute is a think tank that basically released the think tank doctrine, marching orders, and the UN and the IMF have picked it up. Now, what they're looking at is for there to be a one world currency, a one world central bank, above all nations. No nation will have authority over it. It will be completely independent. In other words, it will own you and the entire planet. But they're looking at, the Bookings Institute said that they were the ones that talked about the dinar and so on and so forth, and that they said a currency like that should play at least a 40% role in the world currency. In other words, they're saying that gold and silver should back at least 40% of each one of the dollars, as well as, and then the other 60% will be made up of a basket of currencies. Well, the IMF has picked that up. The IMF released information saying that the SDR is the ideal currency for transition to the new currency. So in other words, you're going to be able to print your own currencies backed by the SDR until this other currency gets off the ground. And so the answer to the question is it's about 40%. The SDR has not gone away. This is what the IMF wants to do. You have a lot of think tanks and the IMF and all these individuals saying it's what they want to do. You have France and China meeting to liquidate and get the dollar out of their economic structure. There are so many countries that are doing that now. I mean, it's the end. They're going to break America, and that's the ultimate. That was the ultimate plan. Is they had to come up with some way where they could do a twofold attack, that they could break the American spirit as well as issue in global governance at the same time. Well, I mean, with the inflation and the printing of dollars and the continual printing of dollars, you see that effect happening. And what's funny is that the board of directors for the IMF, the individuals who are on all the councils and the committees, the big cheeses, they're the same guys that own all the central banks that are in trouble. So, I mean, as a population, we have these people that are basically, when they get up there and the IMF makes these speeches, they aren't talking to anybody else. They're talking to themselves. They might as well put a mirror in front of their face and say, you guys did a bad thing, and now we're going to take over. Because it's the same exact people. It's the same players. It's the same international money brokers have now consolidated their real wealth and assets to formulate the IMF and to create this one world banking cabal. And the people that they're lecturing that did bad things are the central banks, but they own the central banks. I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me why the population is buying any of this crap. And, it is my opinion. It's no one else's. It's Eric Lovely, not Wide Awake News and whatnot, and all that other jazz. It's all me. But once upon a time, when this country was formed, and they asked about the banks and the king and so forth, and there was a huge debate about the paper money and the issuances of the debt and the crown and England and so forth, and they had a debate for 3 days on what they could do, where they covered that they had been to court for 10 years. I mean, there was court proceedings and protests and so on and so forth. Just a countless number of peaceful means that they attempted to change things. And in the end, it came down to Adams, who said, well, we've done all we can do. It's time to hang them. And that's really, really, people need to wake up to this and smell the bacon, because that's where we're at. There is no way out of this. You can't vote your way out. You can't move to another country. Unless you're going to seed the moon and put up a colony there or something, and you figured out how you're going to do that, there's nowhere to go.
Yeah, I mean, I know. I appreciate you saying you're speaking for yourself, but how can you argue with that, Eric? I mean, do you need to say that? I mean, what is the last straw? I tell you something though, there isn't going to be this mass awakening. Everything is done. Controlled opposition. We see the riots going on in Egypt right now. I mean, that's, I believe, organic, but I think it's because the people are hungry. It isn't this far-fetched fantasy of, they want democracy, so-called democracy in their country. And we're going to see the same thing here, and it's going to okay, I'm getting a message from Brett. I was going to say, we're not going to see people saying, wait a minute, this is just too much. The people who are running the IMF, they're the same people who brought us into the position we are now. The CFR is set up to have the too big to fails continue on forever and actually run the world global system. The global financial system. The awakening, I don't think, is coming. I think the chance to do something. I know you're working on something on the New Continental Congress, and I want to get into that in a minute. I want to also make an announcement. Sorry, I'm stambling all over myself here, but Brett is sending me messages. The phone lines are open, 877-342-6673. I know a bunch of people tried to call and were sending messages in the chat that it was busy. Brett just checked them. They're working. We do have a caller on the line. Eric, can you take a question? I think it's probably going to have to do with these free trade zones, because you started mentioning that and the room kind of lit up talking about wanting more information on this. So, Dan, are you there?
Yeah, hey, Charles, this is Dan with Freedom for You and Me. How are you, sir?
Good. How are you? Thanks for calling. I figured that was you. I remember. When are we going to start seeing more videos out of you, by the way?
I'm telling you, man, I'm running 3 companies, and it's all I can do to put up what I can put up. So can't keep up with you.
I appreciate what you're doing. I appreciate you calling. Did you have a question? I know you had a question you wanted to ask Eric. So
yeah, it wasn't about free trade. It was just more about the percentage of. I guess my question to Eric would be: can we make an argument now to peg the current dollar that we have to a certain percentage of gold and silver, and force that argument to say, why, we're not going to go back on a full-blown gold standard, rather maybe our dollar's backed by 10% of gold or 20% of gold, and that would lock in any spending that's currently taking place that's completely out of control, plus it would force an audit on maybe the Fed, but also on the gold reserves that we currently have or may not have.
Well, technically, in a rosy rainbow world, yeah, it could be done. I think that the gold standard, coming back to a more true gold standard, is where you need to be. I don't think 10% or 20% is enough.
No, I don't either. I think it's a starting point to force the argument to say, all right, if you're saying you want to give up our sovereignty and give up our nationalism that we have here with our currency, and all these countries are sitting out there saying we're done with the dollar, we're completely, France has now jumped on board, which good thing we liberated them, but let's force that argument out there and say, all right, let's peg it to something, that way we can at least lock the spending. That's $3.73 trillion in spending this year. That would never happen if it was pegged to a certain percentage of gold or silver. And why can't we drive that argument versus saying let's go to an SDR, let's go to a one world currency?
Dan, you're 100% right. And there is one politician out there that has been on that bandwagon for quite some time. But I watching mainstream media on him last night, winning CPAC, Ron Paul, winning the straw poll, and he's marginalized. And actually, they put the tinfoil hat on this guy before the vote was even counted. And he's the only one out there talking, we need to redo our monetary policy. We need to go back to some kind of standard based on sanity rather than, based on the insane system we have now. And it was just 2 years ago when he was gaining traction with his audit the Fed movement and his hard look at the bankster cartel. And now it's right back to he's a nut job. He can never win the nomination. He can never win against Obama in 2012. So I think you're right that is an answer, putting some kind of limit on the amount of money that can be spent because it's tied to something substantial. But that's never going to happen. I mean, that's not going to happen, period. The people who control the rules are the same people who want the system the way it is, and it's not going to change. Eric?
Well, you see, here's what people have to really realize. He's 100% correct. We have things that we could do. However, the problem is that this really is a world push towards a Marxist one-world society. And one of the planks of the Marxists is to spend money in every ludicrous manner you can think of to increase the debt, to break your idea of national sovereignty and nationalism. So they're not going to hear an argument from you counteracting their ultimate plan of amalgamating you into a one-world Marxist situation. The only way, this is something that people really just have to understand. There are a lot of brilliant ideas there. I've talked with people in 32 states now doing the Continental Congress idea. And it is an address, and the main platform is a return to the Constitution and the complete dismantling of corporate government. Completely. Just completely do away with it and start with elections and things that the Constitution tells us we should do, a return to the Constitution. But these people that you're dealing with, they don't care. They aren't listening to you, and Americans need to understand that. There's no more, people can try, feel free, but there's no more having the conversation or making the debate present in the mind of your politicians, because they have one objective, to sell you out. That's it. There's nothing else, and they aren't going to hear anything else. So unless you're going to be surrounding their homes with pitchforks and torches, they ain't hearing none. That's really how it breaks down. And unfortunately, I've been talking about this for a long time. When we had the ability to do something, no one cared. Now a lot more people care, and our options to do something are limited into one venue that is really going to work. So it's heartbreaking and it's depressing and so forth to think that we have come full circle back to all the way back around to 1776 again. But as soon as the sooner that Americans wake up and understand that, the sooner we'll figure out what really needs to be done and how we take care of these people, because there's no more talking to them. You just remove them from office, forcibly if necessary, and then we can have the debate. But until that happens, if we're squawking up to Capitol Hill, their ears are shut, they got the earplugs in, they're sitting on their little bean chair watching rock videos and having their butler massage their feet. Because it's just like Charlie said earlier, it's the let them eat cake, we're going to do what we want, and it's the end of the road, and you see the money. I told you 2011 would be the hot year. Everything's going to start falling apart, which it is already. The prices are skyrocketing, food shortages, markets, securities, bond holdings, everything. It's all going to pot because it's all based on a fiat dollar that's going to die sometime this year. It's inevitable. You can't stop it. So We need to move away from having conversations and move into kicking some butt and taking names.
Dan, did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
No, I think he's right. I think we live in a world of 30-second sound clips, and that's all the attention span that 99% of the people have out there. And I understand what he's saying, that this may or may not come to fruition just because of the powers that be, that they want that argument. They don't want that argument. They want things to move in the direction that they want it to move. But at the same time, if we can even start guiding the conversation, it's kind of like when you go out and you take a poll. You can make the poll say whatever you want based off the questions that are asked. I'm saying,
right.
Let's go out there and let's just say, even if it's 10% or 20% or 5% or 2% or 1%, it's something just to peg it so that way we can say, stop. Here's your limit. You've reached your limit.
Well, Dan,
and then something along those lines.
My email address is lightintheddarkness@thewatchman.biz. And
give it out again, Eric. I think it. Give it out again.
Lightintheddarkness@thewatchman.biz. And there's me, and then I have a national director under me for the Continental Congress, and we're having that conversation. They refuse to have the conversation with us, so we're just going to eliminate them from the communication table. And that is a conversation we're having. We talk about the monetary policy, the dissolvement of the Federal Reserve note, and replacing it with an American dollar, and replacing it with a sound currency American dollar, and just dissolving the debt and everything that has to deal with it. There are 36 states of representatives already in the conversation. If you would like to join and see what you can do within your state, because every state is independent in this Continental Congress. They all have your own voting, your own leadership, your own structure. But that's where we're at. They refuse to have the conversation with us. So the Continental Congress is moving in the direction where we have just decided that the federal government should no longer exist. They do not cater to the people. They do not listen to us. They refuse to have the conversations we want to have. So we're just going to do away with them and have the conversations and do it our own selves, just like 1776 when we originally did it in the first place. So if you'd like to get involved and have that conversation with like-minded, intelligent people, email me.
Give it out one more time, and I'm going to go to Tim in Seattle. So give out your email one more time, Eric.
LIGHT in the darkness @thewatchman.biz.
All right, Dan. Thank you very much for the call.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate it.
You bet. Thank you for your videos as well. Freedom for You and Me on YouTube. Check him out if you haven't already. Tim in Seattle, are you there?
Yes, Charlie,
Tim?
I am.
Hey, thanks for holding. I appreciate it. We got about 3.5 minutes left, so go with your question.
Okay, well, Eric, I don't know if you're a Fed or what you are, but you're trying to put a lot of people in jail. The fact of the matter is that your little constitutional Congress is a little late. You don't have the weapons. You don't have the secret societies, the technology, nothing. Anybody that goes down the course of your road, it's just going to end up in prison. If they do what you talk about doing, and people like Alex Jones getting them all upset, then they're just going to end up in prison. But a bigger
how about it then?
Hold on a second, Tim. I want to give Eric. I'm sure he's heard this argument, so I want to give him fair time to respond to it. So go ahead, Eric.
Well, in 1776 and around that time period, the same exact things were said to Thomas Jefferson, to Adams, to Washington. They said it all. The king said they would be hanged, that they would be imprisoned, and so forth. And then they won. It sounds like to me that I don't know what people think, how they can attempt to play this game and win at a game that's run by them. They make all of the rules. They make all of the decisions. They pass all of the judgments. You can't win. So the only way to do it is to eliminate them. You have the constitutional right. And yes, people may go to prison. Yes, even I may get shot. Who knows? But I'm not a coward. And I know what freedom and liberty is. And I will maintain the Jeffersonian principles that all men are created equal, and we all deserve freedom and liberty, just money. We all deserve our own beliefs and rights. I'm not going to give up. I don't care what they threaten me with, and neither do the people who are in the Continental Congress. Now, you can be a doer, or you can be a watcher. That's up to you.
Tim, are you still
You
on?
ready, Charlie?
Yeah. We about 2 minutes. So go ahead. Give me a minute and let.
Okay.
Eric
Well, I'm not going to argue with them. I'm not going to go into how every new house is built already has a built-in listening device or the kind of technology they have. I'm not even going to go into any of that. What I am going to go into is that everything is being run by supercomputers right now. We're on a false matrix. The real big elephant in the room that nobody's talking about, I mean hardly anybody, maybe Steve Quayle, is it's called Wormwood or Planet X. All people have to do is look up. It's on its way. That's what's creating everything right now. That's why they think they can just take trillions of dollars without doing a 9/11. That's why they're setting up all these FEMA camps. That's why they don't care about the Chinese getting a piece of land. None of it makes any difference. It's all a false matrix. It was run by supercomputers.
Well,
Tim,
whether
Tim,
that's true or not, the bottom line is
Hold on one sec, Eric. I want to cut him loose because we only have about a minute left. But Tim, I greatly appreciate your point of view. I respect your point of view just as much as I respect Eric's point of view. So I appreciate you not keeping it civil. I mean, I appreciate you keeping it civil. You too, Eric, because I know how sometimes conversations can roll out of control. Eric, please finish up with your thought. And I'm going to put my 2 seconds in, just because. I understand where Tim's coming from. I do understand that. And we see a crackdown. We see the rhetoric by the mainstream media now focusing back into the populace. That is the new pool of terrorists. It's going to be domestic terror. So I understand where Tim's coming from. And on the same token, I hate to play the middleman here, but Eric, I absolutely see what you're talking about as well, because I know nothing's going to change. I know that my hope is the collapse, and you know this because we talked about this before. We have a collapse, and out of it, people like Eric Lovely and people like myself remember that this was a constitutional republic to begin with, and we return to that. Some of us have different ideas on how to end up in a constitutional republic again, and that's why we have this show to talk about these points of views. Eric, with a little bit of time left, finish up, give me a rebuttal to my response, and tell us what you're doing or how to get a hold of you and how to listen to you. Go ahead.
Well, you can catch me at thewatchman.fm, and you can hear, my daily broadcast over there Monday through Friday at 2 p.m. Pacific time. But my main objective to address the conversation is whether or not it's green space aliens, British, the king, the crown, British soldiers. I mean, they had so many arguments that they had spies everywhere back then. I mean, we really are in the same spot. I don't care. I can't change a world-ending event. But I can tell you this, that God intended us to strive to be free. And the last time this situation happened, and the call for liberty went out, 97% of the country gave back a busy signal. That's what you're getting today.
Yeah.
People live in fear.
Absolutely.
They're afraid of this. There's so many things out there that they live in fear from that they're not wanting to pick up the phone and answer.
I know what you're saying. I hate to cut you off, but we got about 10 seconds left. Eric Lovely, thank you very much. TheWatchman.fm, TheWatchman.biz. Check out his show over there. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in tonight for the heated debate back and forth. I appreciate it. Eric, I can't disagree with anything you said. The busy signals are what we're getting out there. Stay tuned. Jeff Rentz is coming up next.